What's going on? Hope you're going well and keeping sane during this isolation. I know I'm definitely not. Wait. What's going on? How you going? I hope you're doing well and I hope you're not losing your mind during this isolation. So I was scrolling my Instagram feed the other day, as you do in isolation because there's not much else to do, and I saw this photo by Heartnet Media, who is a local photographer in Melbourne, and he's an absolute gun at car photography. And it made a little light bulb go off for me, and I thought, why don't I try and get a car photo like that outside a petrol station, or as I like to call them, the servo, and combine that with a dreamlike effect, which I saw by a guy I met in Tokyo called Tussan, and he took some photos of a Mercedes and gave it like a dreamlike edit. So I'm thinking I'll go down to a local petrol station and get a really cool, well-lit servo shot and then give it a dreamlike edit. Before we hit up the servo though, I gotta go wash my car, so I'll take you guys down to do that with me. Alright, so I just got to the petrol station and the hardest part now is going to be positioning my car so that I get the Shell logo and the pumps, and then I need to line that up with my car so that I can get like a nice composition and get some good depth as well. So it'll be a bit of a tedious process readjusting the car, but yeah, at least we're here. So it took me a good fucking 5 minutes to reposition the car. It's super hard to do when you're by yourself, but I managed to do it, and I think I got the car looking bloody good in front of the servo, so it's a sick composition. So I'm gonna go get my tripod from the car and I'll show you how to set it up so that we can take 2 exposures, and then later in Photoshop we'll merge them together, and then on top of that we'll do the Surreal dreamlike edit just to get a well-rounded image that is what I pictured in my head. So just to give you guys an example of the composition, I'm actually parked really far away so that I get some nice compression, and I've parked it so that my tail light and my right or my left back wheel, when I come around at a certain angle, they all align, as you can see, and so that's just an idea of the composition that I've got going. So I actually just changed the composition entirely, so forget whatever the fuck I just said before, but same principle applies. I've got the back tail light and the back left wheel aligning with the Shell logo, just got a different angle, so we're gonna shoot this now. Alright, so for the first shot, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have it at a aperture of 7.1 and ISO 500, and that way we just really capture the tail lights and the Shell lights, which later, once we merge together, you'll be able to see the detail in both of those. So that's the first shot that we're gonna get. And we just use manual focus so that we can get it perfectly in focus. Alright, so for the next shot now, what we're going to do is we're going to bump our ISO down as low as possible so we eliminate all the grain, and we're going to put our aperture even higher just so we've got everything in focus. And I'm going to do a long exposure now, and we'll do it at we'll do one at 4 seconds. And we'll do another few different goes, just different length exposures just to see how we go, and we'll use whichever one's best in post, but giving myself as many options as possible. So that last shot, I think it worked out pretty well. So I'm going to take those all now and we'll get back home and put them all together.
The next day.
Alright, so we're back home. It's the next morning, and as soon as I woke up this morning and chucked all the photos on my laptop, I realized I made a bad mistake last night, and when I was taking my long exposure, I completely forgot to turn my tail lights off. So That completely negates the point of doing an underexposed shot of the tail lights and then a long exposure with them off, so that you merge them and get the best detail of both worlds. So luckily I took another couple exposures that were halfway between the two, so I'm gonna actually merge those together instead, so that I get a bit more detail in the car and then detail in the shell in the background. But yeah, I fucked up. Anyway, so we are in Photoshop now, and our bottom layer, you can see, is slightly underexposed, so we do still get detail in the tail light and also in the shell logo. And the other photo is just slightly more exposed than that, and it just means there's a tiny bit more detail that we can bring out in the car. So the first thing we want to do, if you notice, if I remove this, is that the tripod moved slightly just in the wind when I was taking the photos. So I want to actually line them up. So what I do to line them up is I'll zoom in just so I can get a better reference, and I'll go to screen mode, and then I will, just with my arrow keys, align it so that they look perfect, and that looks good to me, and I was using my number plate as a point of reference. Alright, so to get started, what we'll do is we'll actually keep that on screen mode, but I liked the detail in the shell logo a lot more, so I'm actually going to create a mask layer out of it, and I'm just going to paint over that just to bring that detail back. It's just very loose. I'm not doing it super strictly, but that looks better to me. You can see the before and after, it just lights up the foreground in the car a bit more. And so what we'll do is we'll merge these two layers, and that becomes our background base layer that we're going to work with to create the dreamlike effect. So to create the dreamlike effect, what you want to do is duplicate your background layer like this, and make the blend mode on that screen, create a mask, and then we want to go to image, apply image, and you have to make sure that the blending is multiply. Opacity at 100%, channel RGB, hit OK. Then what you're going to do is go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur, or Gaussian blur. I don't know how the fuck you pronounce it, but it's one of those, I'm pretty sure. And straight away you can see that already looks way more surreal, and you get that dreamlike effect immediately. So the bigger the radius, the more dreamlike you're going to get. The smaller the radius, the less dreamlike you're going to get. Quick maths. So I think I'm going to have a little play around, and I like it around here, I think. So I'm going to hit OK. Now, one thing that I want to do is actually mask out my car and the foreground, so that way the background looks surreal but not the car, so it looks like the car is in a surreal dreamlike world. So just make sure that you're painting in over here, and again, it's very loose, it's not a big deal. And there, so that's all we have to do to get the dreamlike effect. What we're going to do now is bring it into Lightroom and have a play around just to get the final edit. The before and after of the dream effect looks like this. So you can see it glows a lot more, and it's not super in your face, so it's still pretty subtle, and that's what I like about it. So I'm gonna save this now and we'll jump into Lightroom. All right, so now we're in Lightroom. The first thing we're gonna do is crop it and straighten it. And to do that, we'll go to crop 4:5, which is what you wanna do if you're posting to Instagram, not that I do. And then we'll straighten it, and I'm just gonna bring it in a tiny bit just so it's even. And so that's a really nice looking composition, holy fuck. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go down to our tone curve, and we're gonna create an S curve. To do that, we will bring the highlights up, and that gives it even more of a dreamlike effect. Shadows down, and we'll bring the fade up, which always looks sexy. Alright, so that's that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my adjustment brush up here, which you can press K for, and I'm going to paint over my car to bring back the detail and get back its true color, because it actually is really gray. So what we'll do is we'll paint over that, and you hit O on your keyboard so you can see where you're painting. Again, I'm doing this very loosely, and I'm not going to paint over my tail lights because I want to leave them as is. So that looks good to me. Now what we're going to do is we are going to desaturate it, and straight away that's looking like that's more my color. Bring the shadows up, bring the highlights up as well a bit, and the exposure just under 1 stop, and that's looking way better. So that's my car now, and we'll look at that before and after. Straight away, that's already a huge difference. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring a graduated filter up from the bottom, hit O again just to see what we're working with, and we're just covering the road now. So what we want to do is accentuate the car by darkening the foreground, and we'll also give it a bit more clarity just to make it a bit more reflective. So clarity up, exposure down, contrast up, and shadows, texture as well, maybe a bit more clarity. All right, so that's looking good. Quick before and after, and we'll bring one more graduated filter down from the top, and what we'll do with that is we will bring some warmer tones into it because that shell logo is very warm. Bring some saturation as well. I want to bring the highlights down a tiny bit just so we can get a bit more detail. And bring the shadows up. In fact, we'll bring the exposure a tiny bit more up. I really just fucking slide the thing around until I'm happy. There's no secret formula to it. Obviously practice makes perfect, but yeah, for the most part I just slide the shit around until it looks good. So I'm happy with that. I think that gives it a real nice dreamlike effect. Now I'm gonna go down to my HSL tab, and I'm gonna go to my oranges. I'm gonna bump the luminance up a tiny bit more, put some more saturation in it, and maybe change the hue a tiny bit, but don't want to touch it too much. We'll go to our reds as well, and I'm going to bring the luminance down a tiny bit just so the tail lights look a bit more mean. Some saturation, and yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Let's look at the before and after. Nice. So that's all you've got to do. It's super easy. Anyone can do it, and all you need to do is a few little steps and you get your photo looking like this. Alright, so there you have it. I hope you learned something in this video. I know I fucked up quite a bit, but who cares? I went out, I had fun. It's something that you can do by yourself or with friends once this isolation is finished, and you can apply this dream edit technique to pretty much any photo that has either neon or bright signs, or the sun even as well. I hope you take what you learned and you can apply it in your own way, and thank you for coming along with me. Now before the video ends, I actually wanted to introduce a new segment, and that's video of the day. Now, what this is going to be is me basically sharing with you a video that I've watched on YouTube that inspired me, or I thought was really cool, or something that I think can be of value to you. And so for the first video of my video of the day segment, I want to share with you a video by a guy called James Matthews, who's a really creative British YouTuber, and his latest video, Isolation Insanity, is probably the coolest Q&A I've ever seen. It's so creative, it's really fun to watch, so check that out. I'll leave the link in the description below so you can go see his work. I hope with this video of the day segment, I'm able to expose you to other YouTubers that inspire me, and you can find some awesome content out there. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, then I would really appreciate a like or a comment or even a subscription. If you do subscribe, don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can be notified when I drop new videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Fuck. Peace out.